I'm Dr. Kate Boyd, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the pitfalls of overcurving your fingers and discuss finger alignment at the piano. Piano students are told early on, curve your fingers, curve your fingers. I certainly remember being told that, and I wouldn't be surprised if you were taught that as well. As a matter of fact, I'm actually curious. What did your teacher tell you about curving your fingers when you started playing the piano? Tell me in the comments below. Curving your fingers isn't wrong. I mean, after all, I showed you in the hand position video I made that we need a rounded, supported hand bridge, and you can see the fingers are curved in that. And we don't want to play with a flat hand, but we don't want to overcurve. And unfortunately, it's very possible and very common to curl the fingers. My theory about why this happens is because children and beginners tend to be more apt to approach the piano like this, especially children with their small hands. So they need to be told and reminded to keep their hand rounded, and that is manifested in the term curve your fingers, because that's the easiest way to remind somebody to keep their hand rounded is just say curve. But the thing you want to avoid is overcurving the fingers. A lot of people bend at these two joints, sometimes even tipping over and playing on the nail, and you can hear the click against the keys when people do that. Basically, the reason we don't want to overcurve or curl the fingers is because you're working against yourself when you try to play the piano that way. The muscles you use to bend these two joints are on the lower side of the forearm, and the muscles you use to lift the fingers, like this, are on the upper side of the forearm. So when you curl the fingers and then also try to lift them at the same time, these two sets of muscles are working in opposition to each other, and that can be incredibly tiring and also lead to injury. Just try this. We're going to curl these fingers, and we're going to also try to lift them at the same time. It's a little bit like if you're driving the car and you hit the accelerator and the brake at the same time. You're working against yourself. But if you release the fingers and you just move them this way from these knuckles, you can see that it feels a lot less effortful because you're not engaging these muscles. You're only using these muscles to lift the fingers. The other reason curling the fingers is not advised is because it causes the wrist to contract and tense up. It's much harder to hinge at the wrist and move it laterally or up and down when the fingers are curled. And we need to have a loose wrist in order to have the proper alignment to play each note. Something to notice here is that your fingers are many different lengths, right? The thumb is very short and stubby, the second finger is longer, the third finger is the longest, fourth finger is similar to the second finger, and the fifth finger is the shortest. However, the keys are straight. They're not different lengths, obviously, and so we need to make adjustments moving slightly in and out of the keys in order to accommodate the different finger lengths. This in-out motion is initiated by the upper arm. You can see for yourself, if I hold my arm in position, the only way to move the fingers closer inward toward the fall board, this is the fall board, is by moving my upper arm. See, I'm moving up here. So it's almost like a sawing motion. There's a common misconception that all of the action at the piano originates with the fingers, since the fingers are actually what's in contact with the keys, and that's often what people focus on when they watch a pianist perform. But in reality, the arm and wrist position the fingers so they're in the right place to play. This is why a lot of people start grabbing onto the keyboard. They let the fingers lead the arm around rather than use the arm to position the fingers. You don't want to account for the different lengths of the fingers by curving them and keeping your hand in the same position. I see students try to do this a lot. Instead, you need to adjust by moving your arm out and into the keys very, very slightly as you play to adjust to each finger. I'm going to take a 5-finger pattern and I'm going to play it 3 different ways. Here's what it's like when I play a 5-finger pattern all in one position without making any adjustments for the lengths of the fingers. I'm putting my arm into place and I'm just going to play each finger. So here's what it looks like, and I want you to especially notice the contact point on the keys, and here we go. Here's what it looks like when I make adjustments to play on the similar part of the key by overcurving my fingers and bending at those two joints. Here's the thumb. Now I'm going to bend the second finger, bend the third finger. Now here's what it looks like when I make adjustments using my upper arm. I want you to notice my upper arm, and I want you to also notice the place where I play on the keys. So here's the thumb. I move out a little for the second finger, third finger, fourth finger, and now I'm moving a little back in. Where we get into trouble is when we do black keys. So let's look at E flat major here. The tendency for people, I see this a lot in students, is to curve in order to bring the fingers closer to the edge of the keys. And so that looks like this. And then the second finger, we're curving. Third finger, I kind of lifted my fingers so you could see what I was doing. Instead of curving to make that happen, pull the arm out, watching here again. Again, the motion is initiated by the upper arm, and I'm not grabbing with my fingers. Instead, I'm letting my arm move them into position. Another consideration when talking about alignment is the fact that not only are your arms adjusting in and out of the keys, but there are also slight adjustments up and down as you move between the white keys and the black keys. I call the white key, black key relationships on the piano keyboard the topography of the keyboard, because you have to develop an awareness of going higher and lower. On most pianos, the difference between the white keys and the black keys is only about a half an inch, but that difference is significant when we're talking about micro adjustments. To play on the black keys, your arm will raise ever so slightly. But we gotta be careful, because a lot of people will raise their arm by tensing and lift the shoulder. Doing that can lock your playing mechanism, which is really just a fancy term we use to refer to the arm from the shoulder to the fingertip. We want the arm to be free and loose all the way from the shoulder to the fingertips. To prevent your shoulder from hunching and locking, it's helpful to think of your arm floating as opposed to lifting the arm from the shoulder. To make the needed adjustment from white to black keys, imagine that you have a balloon between your rib cage and your upper arm. And that balloon inflates and deflates as you play and move between the black keys and the white keys. And as a matter of fact, I have a little visual aid for you today. I have a little balloon, and I'm going to inflate it and show you that motion, how that works between the rib cage and the upper arm. So first of all, I inflate it a little bit. And now I'm going to place this balloon between my rib cage and my upper arm, so you can see this is kind of what my arm looks like when it's floating out to the side. And you can see also that my shoulder is really quite relaxed. And then now if I deflate the balloon, you can see my arm comes closer to my rib cage. And so that feeling, and the whole time my shoulder is very relaxed. To demonstrate the shift that's needed when you go between the black keys and the white keys, I'm going to play part of Schubert's Impromptu in A flat, Opus 90, number 4. Here's the beginning of it. This piece consists of triads that are broken. They would be broken down into these patterns, and I'm blocking that. Right, so the whole piece is really blocked chords, and by the way, that's how I would really recommend practicing it if you're learning this piece. Every triad, we're going to base the height of the arm, as in the adjustment to the black key or white key, based on what the thumb is doing, because the thumb is getting the whole hand into position here. So this first triad, the thumb is on an A flat, which is a black key. Second triad, the thumb is on an E flat, which is a black key. Third triad, the thumb is on a C flat, which is a white key, and then black key, and then still kind of black key because it's the same hand position. So the way that that looks, if you watch my arm, and I'm making very slight adjustments. Here, this is like when the balloon is inflated, so my arm is out a little bit, then I come down a tiny little bit, then I go up, and then at the same time, just FYI, I'm also kind of making adjustments based on finger length. You can kind of see a little bit going, right? So this is high, high, low, high, high, same thing. Now the thumb here is on a G, which is a white key, so we're going to be a little lower. Notice how there were constant micro adjustments to every note I was playing. Even though I was playing triad chords, my arms were adjusting to lead my fingers to where they needed to be to play. A lot of times students will fix their hand into place and just kind of jump like this, and so they don't make those adjustments. So to summarize, as you play the piano, you want to adjust 3 different things. First, you want to adjust to your angle of approach and make the finger parallel to the key, which I talked about in my previous video. Second, you want to adjust to finger length by slightly shifting your arm forward and back according to whatever finger you're playing at the moment. And third, you want to adjust as you move between the white keys and the black keys on the keyboard by feeling your arm float a little higher when you play the black keys. That, in a nutshell, is alignment. Remember, you only play one note at a time, and you need to properly align the hand for each note. Now that I've shown you that the fingers don't lead the arm around, but that the arm is responsible for putting the fingers into the correct playing position, hopefully you can see that alignment is key to avoiding injury. Also, when you have your entire playing mechanism, or arm, operating in alignment and with efficiency, you can produce a beautiful singing tone and with a lot less effort because everything's working together and you're not fighting yourself to play the piano. The good news is alignment is something that you can definitely shift once you start paying attention to it. Most of my students, once they start thinking about finger alignment, are able to start making adjustments pretty quickly. As I promised earlier in this video, I have 3 tips for how to start changing your finger alignment at the piano. Playing the piano is a highly repetitive activity, and it makes sense that if you repeat a motion a certain way a million times for years and years, and now you want to change it, it'll take a lot of repetitions and a lot of reminding to make those changes. That's why my first tip is to focus on loosening up the wrist and playing your pieces in slow motion, maybe even hands separately, to check that your fingers are parallel with the keys as you play and work out the choreography of moving from one note to another. Revisiting this frequently over the course of your practice sessions will help you make a shift over time. So my second tip is to set a timer during your practice to go off every 10 minutes or so. And then when the timer goes off, just spend a minute or 2 reviewing, and over time it'll start to become more automatic and integrated into your playing. That'll be much more effective than if you spend a big chunk of your time trying to focus on changing your alignment, because it can actually kind of paralyze you at the piano and make you feel inhibited. So I suggest just keep coming back to it and reviewing it briefly but frequently. My third tip is to really focus on how you play the black keys. Because they're higher and narrow, it's actually easier to discern if your fingers are parallel to the keys and landing in the middle of them. So as you play, try stopping and checking in when you land on black keys and make the needed adjustments. Sensitize yourself to your fingertips and pay attention to how it feels when you are centered squarely on the key or not. This is an exercise that has helped me over the years, and it's something I still do sometimes today when I'm working on cleaning up something or adjusting my alignment. The work you do on the black keys will transfer over to better finger alignment on the white keys. Remember, awareness is the beginning of all change. If you enjoyed this video and you want to keep getting tips for how to take your piano playing to the next level, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Don't forget to grab my free PDF practice companion that accompanies this series of videos. The link is in the description below. My next video is going to be about forearm rotation at the piano. I'll see you there, and happy practicing.